Good. Okay, great.
Recording has started.
Okay, we'll bring the City of Olivet Planning and Community Design Commission for February 18th, 2021 to order. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Rob Jurgel,
Present.
Carol Wagner,
Absent.
Jody Rich present, Richard Brophy,
Absent.
Brian Lewis,
Present.
Michael Saunders,
Present.
and Tim Spiegelglass.
Present.
Let it also be known that Carlos Trejo, the Director of Planning and Community Development, is in attendance, as well as Missy Waldman, City Council Liaison. Is Bridget Waters in attendance?
She's on vacation this week, but she was going to try to log on, but I guess she won't be able to make it. So I'm
No,
not
that's
sure.
okay. I just wanted to make sure if she was on here to get her listed.
Yeah, I don't see her on the attendee side yet.
Great, great. Okay. Well, we'll just take this time right now, just to kind of review the commission procedures. I think we're getting better and better with Zoom, but there's always hiccups. So just bear with us as we go through it. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to go through. We will also have time for public comments in the beginning, as well as at the end. We request that these public comments be for items that are not listed on the agenda. And if you do have comments on the, that's regarding items on the agenda, that you wait for that item to come up. As we go through these items on the agenda, there'll be a staff report and a review, and then members of the commission will, discuss these things. At that point in time, we'll also bring on the petitioner and any other applicable people that they might add, and then we'll bring in public comments. We do ask that the public comments be limited to 3 minutes, so we make sure we get everybody's voice heard, as well as to respect everybody's time here involved. When you do ask to be, if you do have a public comment or anything, we ask that you raise your hand. There's usually a little icon at the bottom, or you identify it in a question at the bottom as well. And if you can, when we bring you on to the panel to ask a question or to give a comment, we ask that you state your name and address for the record as well. Okay, great. So Carlos, right now, do we see any public comments or anything?
Chairman, at this point, we don't. If we can just give a minute. Again, if anybody wants to speak about a general matter not on the agenda tonight, if you can show your hand and I can transfer you over.
And we will also have time at the end too, so keep that in mind. But if you don't want to be part of the whole meeting, this is your time.
All right, Chairman, I see none.
Okay, great. So we'll go on to new business. Item A is 9520 Olive Boulevard, Seasonal Garden Center. The petitioner is the petition type, I'm sorry, is a seasonal garden center site plan review. The description is a 6-month temporary garden center. The petitioner is Pauline Sella with Plant Haven Homes. Property owner is Clackner Family Entertainment, doing business as Olivet Lanes. Carlos.
Chairman, this is the 10th year for the request for Plant Haven Farms to operate a seasonal garden center on the Olivet Lanes property. They were approved to operate last year, but given the pandemic, they did not set up. So this will be, if weather permits, their 9th year in operation, but their 10th request to the city. Our ordinance authorizes or permits what we term a seasonal garden center, limited to 120 days. Usually operations for Plant Haven generally begin in the month of April and end in July. They've always been in compliant with those requirements. And of course, we don't have anything from last year, but for the most part, we have not had any issues with operations, both in noise-wise or traffic-wise on the property grounds. Of course, they are impacted by the construction next door at Easy Storage, and they have kind of shifted their their diagram or request just a little bit to the east towards the Olivet Lanes building, but still practically in the same location. They just kind of shifted over 5 feet over. You can see that in the aerial where they're usually located, and then the revisions on the plans to your left. I'll be glad to answer any specific questions. Again, they've operated at least 9 years. Well, they've operated 9 years on the property grounds. We're hoping that next year they'll have a permanent indoor space. We'll see if time permits. And again, the code requires authorization by the commission through site plan review. Be glad to answer any questions, and I know Ms. Sella is on also.
Carlos, I just have one question, and I wasn't sure. I saw in the report there was talking about a snow tent, over top. Is that something new? Have they had that before?
They've had like a little entrance canopy near the register area. They used that. Well, of course, they weren't in operation last year, but the year before they had it up. It was a small kind of maybe 36 square foot separate tent that was just to provide some cover for the register.
Right. No problem. Okay, that was just a quick question.
Good question.
Does anybody on the commission have any questions or comments on this?
No, Rob, you asked the question I had.
Good. Sorry, I jumped the gun. That being said, do I hear a motion?
Well, Chairman, can I promote Ms. Sella real quick and see if there's any questions?
Oh, yeah. And we should see if we have any public comments. I forgot that too.
Okay. All right, Ms. Sella, you should be transferred over and showing up as an attendee. And then right now I have your video off and on mute. But if you have any questions or comments, or if the commission does. And at this point, I don't see any. She may still be off or.
Can you hear me at all?
Yes, we can now. There you are.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know that. I see the name up there. It's me, John Sella, not Pauline, just because we're one of us on the computer. But in reference to the tent that you're discussing, we've actually got footings that are in the ground that we attach to put the tent up, if you will. The fire marshal has approved the material that we use, and the building commissioner has approved the footings that we use. It has to be so strong per code. And then what we do is we asphalt over those footings during the off season, and then we dig the asphalt up, and sure enough, the footings are all there, and we just hook up to them. The difference is because of the construction that's there, as Carlos recognized, our rectangle of business is going to look a little different. It's just not going to be the same way it's been for the last 10 years. We are, in fact, going to move a little bit closer to the east because the construction that's going on to the west is coming into the old Plant Haven space. And when their construction goes away, then the bowling alley will go back to its original border.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody on the commission have any questions directly for the petitioner? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you, being here and being a part of this meeting.
Well, thank you, and we obviously really appreciate you guys letting us do what we're doing.
Oh, absolutely. Good.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. So, Carlos, can you just check to see if we have any public comments regarding this item?
If there's anybody that'd like to speak in regards to this agenda item, if you can show your hand. So far, I do not see any, and most of the people identified I know are associated with specific projects.
Okay, good.
Chairman, I think we're okay.
Okay, sounds great. So do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Mike.
Motion to approve the petition for site plan review to authorize Plant Haven Farms to operate a seasonal garden center in accordance with section 400.740 point B, beginning April 2021, not to exceed 120 consecutive days, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated February 18th, 2021, subject to any staff conditions noted herein.
Motion's been made. Do I hear a second?
I'll
Second,
second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Carlos, will you please call the roll?
Okay, I'll note that the motion was made by Mr. Saunders and it was seconded by Mrs. Rich.
Thank you.
All right, on a roll call vote. Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Saunders,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approve.
Commissioner Rich,
approved.
and Chairman Dragell.
Approved. All right, great. Okay, we'll move on to item B, which is 2 Pricemont Drive. The petition type is a site plan, community design, and concept stormwater management plan for a new single-family home. The petitioner is Helmut Weber with Helmut Weber Construction Company. The property owner is Helmut Weber Construction Company. Carlos?
All right, Chairman, you received the packet of information regarding the proposed plans for the construction of a new single-family home along the cul-de-sac. It's on the north side of the property, and also the staff report that was issued today. Regarding site plan review, I think the primary concerns initially is, is the size of the home in comparison to the existing homes in the subdivision, which are slowly going through a transition. So these are all the original homes except for the one at the corner that has been redeveloped. This new home is comparable in size to the home that has been developed in the corner, and the size, both the footprint and the floor area, which represents its mass, is well within the dimensional standards of the zoning ordinance. But we always bring those to your attention, especially when we start seeing a transition take place in there. So again, they're in full compliance with the setbacks, the area, the height, and those things. They are proposing a 3-car side entry garage. The majority of the homes, or all the homes within that subdivision, including the one at the corner, the new one at the corner, all have 2-car garages. So this would be the introduction of the first 3-car garage. However, again, they are proposing it, doing it side entry, and it would be compliant with all the side yard and front yard setbacks that are necessary. We did note a little concern about the rear yard and its ultimate usability. As you can see, it's got kind of a split or exposed basement in the back, so there will be a protruding deck structure that will cantilever along the back. Then there's a stairway down to a small stoop. In there, we have some concerns about the viability or the usability of just having that small stoop at the end of the stairs. And then you'll see that they have the detention area a little bit to the northwest of that. And again, we're always, finally, we're always concerned about stormwater impacts as these houses get better. Even though they're in compliance with the dimensional standards, they still have a disruption to the existing grades. So whether a neighbor was getting stormwater before that was downhill, they will continue to get stormwater downhill. Our ordinance is set up to remove some of that stormwater through the detention systems by taking the roof area away. However, velocities do change, and that's always a concern, especially as these new homes take advantage of the existing setbacks.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask a question, Carlos, do you intend to be having something on screen for people to be seeing? Or are we supposed to be seeing you in conversation? I just want
Actually,
that.
the screen should be on, so good point.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So those are the site plan concerns in terms, again, the size of the home, the garage, just being cognizant of those two. We do have concerns about that rear yard and its usability and the stormwater impacts on the north end of the property. And we'll provide some recommendations for consideration by the petitioner. Regarding the guidelines, I think staff had noted the stormwater impacts on the north end of the site in there because that is where the grades fall. Majority of this lot is going to drain towards the north. Remember, the house footprint structure will be caught through the detention systems, but it's all the swells, the sump, and the driveway that again will have a change of grading and possibility changes in velocity impacting what was experienced on the north. And then the tree preservation. Under the plans that's submitted, pretty much all the trees except for 2 along the street side are gone, but we strongly feel that it's impractical to keep those 2 along the street, given the placement of utilities and how construction is going to access the site. If they are kept, we want to make sure that we protect the future buyer, future resident, from the need to remove those trees if their health is impacted or if they die within a couple of years after construction. So again, we provide some recommendations for the commission to consider along with the petitioner. On grading, again, we are concerned as this site drains northward, so it's from the street side on towards the back and how it impacts the properties on the north. They're already receiving, they are downhill, so they are receiving stormwater. Our concern again is trying to mitigate some of the velocities and if possible, create opportunities for some of that water to get sponged before it gets to the rear lot line. On the concept stormwater management plan, we have concerns over the slope of the driveway turnaround on the property to the east. Now it's supposed to go into this well, but these areas are really tight. It's like a 5-foot distance between the edge of the driveway and the property line, and then the neighbor has a fence there. So at least on the portion that has the turnaround, we'd like to see some type of lip along the edge of the driveway to redivert water towards the side and avoid it going directly to the home next door on the east. Again, we still have stormwater impacts on the north side. And again, those are pre-existing conditions. They are on the downhill slope. What we want to focus on is minimizing the velocity and providing opportunities for some of that water to get sponged in the back. And then the placement of the stormwater pit kind of impedes the usability of that backyard. And it's one of those, there may not be a better solution unless it goes towards the front. But typically, there are more, traditionally in our residential districts, more people use the backyards and provide, for accessory structures such as pools, sheds, trampolines, and all those. And as opposed to in the front yard where it's usually pretty well open. That stormwater pit takes a good portion of that backyard and its usable area, especially given that they have that deck extruding outward. And then we're concerned about the discharge of the sump pump along the north edge of the property. Actually, it's on the western side, so I apologize on how that slide is listed. That pump is going to release there, and then it's going to flow backwards along in one of these narrow swells that eventually goes, again, north downhill to the properties, and therefore there's an increase in velocity in there. One thing about sump pumps that we're working with developers and contractors, we understand too that many times they don't know how active that sump pump is going to be until after it's been installed. So we're cognizant of that, and again, we're providing some considerations for the commission as part of the approval if they act on this. The other thing is that this is a private street. It's a very narrow street. It has no curbs, and parking and traffic construction is going to be a problem. And we're going to ask that the developer submit some type of mitigation plan for review by the police department and public works staff before a building permit is issued. The biggest issues or concerns we'll have is, when they start pouring the footing and foundation wall and how that will be coordinated and the delivery of the materials. After that, it's going to be a busy street. And unfortunately, the streets in close proximity to this property are also private. So, and then they're along Price Road, which doesn't have any shoulder for parking. So this is going to be a tough one, and they're going to have to come up with some plan of how they're going to coordinate the crews and the deliveries on that site. And then the last thing, again, generally we don't focus on this, but there's this cantilever deck that extends out from the rear elevation, and then there's a stairway that goes to a small stoop, probably about 2x2 or 4x4 in there, and then that's it. And I think for the most case, it should be expanded to something that's a little bit more usable. I would recommend something no less than 120 square feet. But I have a feeling that eventually we're going to see somebody come back after the property's purchased, get a permit and expand the deck, and that could impact any finished grading that's approved for the property. It could impact the detention area if they are not aware or familiar with where that placement is. Therefore, we'd rather see it addressed now as opposed to later. Again, in our report, we provide some recommendations for considerations on how to address these issues. And those are all part of your report. A copy of the report was issued to the petitioners this morning. I do have full sets of plans here if the commission wants to look at anything specifically. But these are it. And then there's the slide of the recommended motion if the commission considers action. I do have a representative for the petition on the attendees, and I'll be glad to answer any specific questions or go over any components of those plans with the commission before transferring them over.
Does
Carlos?
anybody, go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, you may have mentioned this, but you also called out in the report the masonry under 50%. Is that something to be addressed, or?
Yeah, that's one of the things that, again, the commission will have to take a look at. And in this case, in there, that it's, if you look at the elevation, and bear with me 1 second because I got to switch my screens. Okay. With the elevation in place, and you can see pretty much the 50%, is always hard to calculate, but that first level is primarily a brick veneer that's showing with some stone accents and a bit of shingles. I don't think we have that much of a concern and there what the exact numerical figure is. And I apologize if I emphasize that on the report.
Does anybody else anybody else on the commission have any questions for Carlos?
Carlos, have you said you talked to the petitioner about your concerns earlier today?
We issued the reports earlier today on these, and all those comments are kind of noted in the correspondence letter that Jonathan forwarded back in January.
Okay. Has the petitioner
Commented, no.
got back to you with any of his thoughts on your comments?
No, not as of today.
Okay.
Okay, I don't necessarily have any additional questions. Does anybody else? Not, Carlos, I think let's go ahead and bring the petitioner on because I think these are going to be some good questions to kind of ask and go over with him.
Okay, I am transferring Ryan Meeks with THD. They generally represent the petitioner as their surveyor and engineer. Mr. Meeks, you should be transferred over. I'm going to stop the share just so you're visible for a second. And then if there's any sections of the plans you want to go to, just let me know. Okay. Okay, Ryan.
Hey, good evening. I did want to address a couple of things. The rear yard slope was a concern that was brought up in the comments back in January, and that is something that we did address with plans that we resubmitted on January 26th. And what we did was we lowered the elevation at the rear of the house and were able to make the grades quite a bit flatter than what we had originally in our first submittal. And that resulted in rear yard slopes being no steeper than the maximum existing slope.
Was that a maximum existing slope just to was that predominantly across the yard, or was that just an isolated
It-
area?
Yeah, it kind of varied. In general, it was, let's see, the maximum slope that we have now is 5.5 to 1. The existing slope, I believe, varied from just slightly steeper than 5 to 1 to, I believe, as flat as 6 to 1. So it was in that range.
Okay.
So that's about 18% now is our steepest grade in the rear yard.
Have you had a chance to review, some of the commission's report and some of their recommendations?
I did review. Let's see. The latest report that I found was January 11th. I think Carlos said he sent out another one today. I didn't get a chance to review that one. I know one thing that he was mentioning, the sump pump. We actually have that discharging out from the rear right corner of the home, discharges straight out to the back to 10 feet off the rear property line. And that will flow towards the northeast corner of the property.
Carlos, did you want to maybe go over these items specifically and maybe kind of discuss some of the points? I think it would be good to make sure we're all on the same page.
So Ryan, these were sent to Mr. Weber and his associate at Helmut Weber Construction. So the survey needs to be updated because they added a canopy on the east side of the building elevation in there. Again, I think there's a concern with the rear yard stoop at the base of the deck stairs that it's impractical, kind of impractical. They're just going to go down to a stoop and everything stops there. I think our future resident would want to have a little bit more ample room or space beyond that. And I understand, yeah, the sump pump discharge has been relocated and extended, but if there is a lot of water pressure underneath that, which we don't know, again, having it 10 feet from the rear yard line, it's going to impact the neighboring property. The biggest issue I have, and I'm trying to control, is the velocity speeds, and then trying to, have some of that stormwater kind of seep within the property before it leaves. So therefore, the slower I can get it, the more opportunities there are for it to be permeated by the ground. We want the measurements for the stormwater pit to be taken from the building foundation, not using property lines. And that is because our inspectors don't know where property lines are when they're out there. So they need something physical that we can measure off from in there. And our preference is to have it from the foundation. And then from there that they can measure from those points. So even though there's a distance measurement, we want to make sure we have the two corners of the pit measured off of the foundation wall. And then I'm looking for a 2-foot lip along the eastern edge of the driveway turnaround. The plans given that don't show that there, whether there will be an incline directed to the east with the driveway turnaround. They're showing a small swell along the side, but I'm concerned again of that velocity just going too fast and end up impacting the neighbor's fence. I think it's a wooden fence that's along the side. We'd also like to, request that they submit a landscape plan in conjunction with this site plan for several reasons. One is they're removing over 16 trees on this site. So there should be an expectation, especially on the city's end, that there be some type of replacement of some of these trees. And we'd like to see that in a landscape plan fashion. We recommend that those trees have a caliper of 2 inches or more above planting grade. We also want the professional assessment of the trees that are along the street side. I don't see how they're going to survive this construction. I'm glad he's trying to maintain trees on the site, but given where the utilities that have been identified are, any disconnections or reconnections of water, gas, or so are going to be within the root lines. And more importantly, they're right in the front in an area that has no parking opportunities and is going to be impeded throughout construction. That the worst case is to have a resident purchase a property and then find 2 years later that they have to take these trees down. And again, we're also looking for a landscape plan that has or provides opportunity to impede the stormwater velocities on the north portion of the lot. That could be done through a berm, through some special soils, or through some general landscaping. And that opportunity may not come in until it is purchased or it's under contract. So we're willing to wait for this, but we want it as a condition of the approval. And then again, finally, a construction mitigation plan for parking and how they're going to handle concrete.
All right, thank you. I will address a couple of those items underneath site plan. As far as expanding the stoop at the bottom of the stairs, I don't believe the developer will have a problem with doing that. And then as far as a lip along the edge of the driveway, as you mentioned, there is a swale there between the edge of the drive and the property line. And I did a calculation for the 100-year storm, and the swale is sufficient to hold that 100-year storm. And
How high will the
This-
water be in that 100-year storm? Will it be filled?
it will be, it'll be within about a half inch of the top of the swale for the 100-year storm. But
How wide
it's
is that?
a rare
How
event,
wide
the
is
100-year
that?
storm. I'm sorry.
Excuse me, how wide is that different dimension between the fence and the driveway for that swale?
Oh, between the fence and the driveway, it's,
On the drawing, it says 5.34 feet based on where Carlos's cursor is.
correct. It's 5.34 from the edge of the drive to the property line, but then the fence is a couple feet off of the property line. That varies a little bit because as it goes further back into the lot, it gets further away from the property line, but
Thank you.
And how deep is that swale roughly? 6 inches?
it's 3 inches at its smallest, and then it gets deeper.
I'm half wondering, as we get these, these widths smaller and smaller, and, you understand our concerns that we have with all this. When does it make sense to just pipe it? To have some drains and pipes going through there? I mean, I'm just out of curiosity what your thoughts are.
Well, when you get a high enough quantity of water that either the swale won't hold it or the velocities are going to get high, then that would be a consideration. This is not going to be a large quantity of water because it's really just taking flow from the drive, the proposed drive, and what falls in the swale, and then that part of the yard between the property line and the neighbor's house. The downspouts on the house next door are being piped underground, so it's not taking in water from that roof next door. So it's not a large quantity of water.
Carlos, if you had that lip there, like you were proposing, I guess where would the water drain? It would drain to the back of the yard, the back of the driveway?
Down, correct, down towards this area where they had the retaining wall. Oops, sorry about that.
Out of curiosity, would it be better to have it go into the swale to give it more time to absorb into the yard?
And that might be a means. And they're the key thing, I think, and then would be ensuring that the developer, and we can do this through the permitting process, complies with these proposed grades, because he's showing a 634.08 here off of the garage and 633.37 here. So as long as that slope is maintained as is shown, and over here you have 633.71, 631.71. It's a little concerned, but you're past the house, that it can be kept. What we've seen is that, you know, these end up being kind of inclined quite a bit to the side property, and that the swell just doesn't work as well once the sod is in place, sprinkler systems are put, and things of that nature. So if again, the swell can work, but they're going to have to make sure that they comply with the engineer's plans.
Hey, Carlos, this is Mike. I think I've asked this question before, but the city right now doesn't have any mechanism to have an as-built done to verify that the grades are as designed right now, right? We approve it based on the design, but there's no mechanism at the end of the construction to verify those grades, is there?
There is nothing in the code that requires it, but the commission is well within its authority to make it a condition of the approval.
Okay. All right. And you had mentioned something about the sump pump discharge also. Can you back the image up and explain that concern again? Because it sounded like the answer might just be pulling the discharge back into the lot a little bit, but maybe I misunderstood you.
Okay, I believe the discharge on the sump pump, bear with me 1 second here, because I believe it's on the west side, correct, Ryan?
No, it's on the east side, actually. Northeast, yes, that corner, and then it goes straight out to where the 5 is in the triangle up there.
Yeah.
So would the
So again-
solution to that concern just be pulling it back into the lot so it's got more grass to run over before it gets to the
Correct.
property
Ideal
line?
would be right here in this area, because it's kind of unusable right underneath the pad, the deck. And again, it's to give it a more opportunity to slow that velocity down and allow
Right.
some permeability. It might be an active pump, it may not be an active pump, but we won't know.
Ryan, do you have an
Function.
I'm sorry, what was that?
do you have an issue with pulling that discharge back in that area that Carlos pointed out to? I think it's kind of in that northeast corner of the deck.
No, I don't see an issue with that.
So I guess the only thing that sounds like that's an issue is this 2-inch lip around the driveway. And, I think our concern is to try to maintain, proper flows the way it's done, or the way it's proposed. And I guess if it's not, if something happens, I mean, other than jackhammering concrete and changing slopes, I mean, the only other thing I could think of is to put it into a drain and put it into the retention area as well.
And the only concern on that, and again, I apologize, I'm trying to get the screen to be set correctly, is that if it is an active sump, it can have a continuous, it could be running continuously, kind of, running into the detention system, even if it hasn't rained for a while, and then take up capacity when it's necessary. It's one of those things that, these are size, I think, more extensive than what the MSD requirements would be for commercial in there.
Carlos, I was not talking about the sump pump being discharged into
Okay.
retainage. I was thinking, if there was if we decided not to go with that lip, and for some reason the slopes were off and we didn't have the channel, if you will, the
Mhm.
trench, by the driveway, whether we, kind of put a drain in there and send it to the retaining system. Well, how's everybody else in the
Yeah,
commission?
Carl, let me just ask one more question. I'm sorry. So Carlos, going back to my question earlier, if we did make a condition of providing as-built to verify the grades, would you be more comfortable with that swale between the driveway and the property line?
Absolutely. Again, it reconfirms more about the improvements being in place correctly, like those corner elevations of the back end of the turnaround.
Yeah.
And such, and it provides us a little bit more confidence once we're off of those hard improvements to verify that the grading is correct.
And let me ask another question then, a different topic, but the site plan. So you propose that a landscape plan be submitted. I imagine the petitioner is anxious to get this approved tonight. Can we make that a condition of approval, or do you think it should wait? Approval should wait until after a landscape plan's done?
No, we'd like to see the commission, I'd like to see the commission take action on it on the basis that, again, that there's consensus on the two primary, objectives, slow and impede the stormwater runoff velocity, and provide opportunities for it to kind of, soak in some of that excess water.
So we could make that a condition that you would be comfortable approving at the staff level if we make it a condition of approval?
Absolutely, because it's not an issue about the design, it's more about what does it accomplish the objective. So yes.
Okay. Ryan, any issues on your end if we take that route?
No, I don't have any issues with that.
I'll let other commissioners, speak up, but that seems like a reasonable path for, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, these are just tight sites. We seem to get this, once or twice a meeting these days, and it's just very tight sites. But I'm open to other suggestions, Tim or Ryan or Jody, if you got some other thoughts. But
Has there been anything from the neighborhood to talk about this?
No, and actually, given that it's a private street, we did make sure that the developer reached out to the, pretty much it's more of a street or maintenance association, and also with the adjacent property. So I'm pretty confident that he's talked to the neighbors for the most part, at least from the current street maintenance trustees. They were in support of the plan. And I was surprised I didn't hear anything from the properties to the north. Given that they're downhill and we're familiar with some issues, some stormwater issues, pretty much where these two subdivisions merge more towards the west. But it may be, an added improvement they're looking forward to. I don't think the old home was in bad shape, but I know it needed some, something needed to happen.
Mike, I think your recommendations are good. And so if anybody else had any other thoughts. I do have one other quick question with Ryan, and it's regarding the placement of the detention system. Is there any other suitable spot for that? Carlos had some concerns about how that would impact any future, aspects of that yard.
Well, given the grades and not wanting to make the grade too steep in the rear, I guess the rear 10 or 15 feet of the yard, that was the best placement for the detention, in my opinion.
Okay.
When you look at the grades, and I know you had talked with Jonathan on this, is it because when I look at that backyard, the contours pretty much go parallel with that rear yard line. So what specific about the grades are you talking about? The difference between the front and the back, or in the back, this corner has?
No, as far as if we were to try to push it further to the back, then we would need greater slopes in the rear behind the detention in order to have enough fall to make the detention work. And so I really couldn't push it. And actually, I'm as far back as I can go, basically, with that one corner being 10 feet from the property line.
But I look at it as that if we have a resident that buys it, that uses the outdoor deck and then goes down to the backyard, they're going to be on the west side of the property, and they're going to want the usability on the west side of the property. That detention system was relocated, same location or same placement in distance, but if it was on the east side of the lot, on the back side of the deck area that I cannot access, then I have a more usable backyard in there. Does that make sense?
Kind of on the same line, the same contour line, right? Same.
Correct. Just shifting it to the east so the backyard is more usable.
Yeah, it's something that I could look into.
Because again, access to this back corner, the northeast corner, is somewhat limited by the turnaround, the retaining wall, and the back of the deck. So when I exit this house, I exit on this deck and then come out towards the west. You'd think they'd want to use this area here as opposed to this area here. And if there's that opportunity, or we can, take a look at it to see if there's an opportunity just to shift this eastward and open up this area for the purchaser, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can look at that and see if that would be a possibility. I was trying to not go too steep with the grades right behind the deck, but I understand your point that having an open area on the west side of the backyard would make sense, and maybe even if the east side has to be, slightly steeper than what I have it. And that would open up the west side.
Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments? Carlos, seeing none, is there anybody in the audience that has any public comments regarding this?
Okay. If there's anybody in attendance that would like to speak regarding this petition, if you can show your hand. I know I got 3 of the 4 people that are probably on different items. I'm not sure about the 4th. If there's any questions regarding the petition, if you can show your hand. And the little hand icon can be accessed at the bottom of your monitor. Okay, Chairman, I'm not seeing none.
Okay, great. Any other further discussion before I ask for a motion? Seeing none, do I hear a motion?
Chairman, I'll make a motion, but I'm going to need Carlos's help to put a motion up on the board. I didn't see one in the report.
It should be on page 2.
Page
Top of
2.
page 2. Top of page 2.
All right, well, I'm not finding, I apologize, but you got it up on the board, so I'm good.
All right.
I make a motion for approval of to approve the petition for site plan, community design, and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home at 2 Pricemont Drive, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated February 18th, 2021, subject to any staff conditions noted herein with the following conditions. And I've got 7. Please, guys, everybody check me and make sure I've got them all. A submission of a landscape plan for staff review, specifically to address stormwater velocity and mitigation absorption. A tree protection plan if the plans are, if the petitioner continues with the idea of protecting the 2, saving the 2 trees out front.
Hey, Mike,
Yes.
let me pause you real quick if you don't mind, because this might make it easier for you. Carlos, in his report, he does already have those listed.
Okay. Yeah, I can. Okay. All right.
Recommended conditions for approval.
All right. The as-bilt's in there. I can't find the report here. So is the as-built in there? The parking plan, the sump discharge?
I believe it covers everything except for the 2-inch lip. I mean, we don't, because he lists the 2-inch lip. Maybe
Okay.
Carlos, you could bring that up.
Yeah, I was
Good.
trying to race to get in there. There was a separate packet that was issued this afternoon, Mike, and that's probably why you're not seeing it.
Oh, I got it. Yeah, I didn't pick that up. Okay,
No
my
problem.
bad.
But I do have it up on the screen or on the monitor now.
Yeah, all right. All right, subject to staff conditions noted herein. So, I guess save for the an as-built of the parking lot in lieu of the curb, the 2-inch curb. Does that address them all?
I don't see the stoop on that.
It should be on the,
Site plan, bullet number 3, or bullet number 2. What about relocating the detention system to the east side of?
that
Well,
would
you
be a
know,
new
I was
condition.
going to read them all out. I'm not. All right. With the addition of working with staff to relocate the stormwater structure towards the east of the property.
Very good. Motion's been made by Mike Saunders. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Motion's been seconded by Tim Spiegelglass. Carlos, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
approved.
Commissioner Saunders,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
Commissioner Joviano.
Approved.
The motion passes unanimously.
Very good.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan.
Sorry about the confusion on my part.
All right, so we'll move on then to item C, which is 9328 Kenneth Place. Petition type is a site plan, community design and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home. The petitioner is Andy Cohen with Kennerly Custom Homes. Property owner is Longview Acquisitions. Carlos?
Okay, Chairman, on the monitor, you should be able to see this is a site plan, community design, concept, stormwater management review, and a quick summary of your staff report indicates from the site plan review process, we look at what those impacts are because there are deficiencies in this lot. In this case, it's the width. This is not a wide enough lot. It has plenty of depth, plenty of land area. But the primary concerns are the raising of the lot to accommodate the walkout. That's the top of foundation. The transition between the transition of the home between the lot to the east on Kenneth. There is a 3-car front entry garage elevation that's proposed. There is a significant slope to the driveway. There are impacts to the stream. We're concerned about impacts to the stream and the erosion to the creek just south of the property. And then the overall stormwater impact downstream down this creek. And there we're familiar with issues there given the lack of infrastructure to, so these are pre-existing issues. And this home will have some impacts on those, but it's because of the current infrastructure and how it's laid out. It has nothing to do with the home itself. But those are from the site plan review perspective. On the elevation, we ask you to take a look at the west building elevation and the garage wall, if you're comfortable with the articulation on there. And then there should have been another one there about the transition between this home and the property directly to the east, which is on Kenneth. Those hip roofs just make the structure, given that it has quite a bit of exposed foundation, just kind of seem taller than the older home next door. Again, on stormwater, the impacts on the creek, the potential erosion and downstream effects. On grading, again, this home abuts or has a creek that runs right through it. We're concerned about the erosion and the downstream impacts. On stormwater management, not to sound repetitive, but again, the creek, it's all about the creek. We want to minimize erosion of the banks and be cognizant of the downstream effects. We're concerned over the discharge of the sump pump along the east property edge. Concern over the slope of the driveway. We understand what they're trying to do is kind of mitigate the impacts on the creek, is raise the house up so it can drain at least in the front towards the street. But in this case, they may have gone a little bit too far. Other items, this is one of those where, again, we have a small narrow street that will be needed, that they'll need to address how they're going to park on the street, how they're going to maintain traffic, especially when they're doing the foundation pours and getting infrastructure in and out. Again, there's a stoop at the basement rear yard exit. This probably needs to be expanded. It's no different than the concern previously. Now, on all these, I did have a discussion with the petitioner. They did call me back this afternoon, and they understand the staff concerns and are willing to work with staff as we go through some of the options that we're throwing out for the commission to consider to address these issues. I'm going to take one quick step back. There is a defined creek that bisects this property. Matter of fact, it pushes the house or the proposed house closer to the street on the north side, because about 2/3 of the property is south of the creek, 1/3 of the property is north of the creek. So the buildable area is really constrained on the site. And I'm going to go to I'm going to change my view. So bear with me 1 second here. So you can see the overall depth of the area of this lot. Here's Kenneth Place on the bottom end. And all the way back here is a piece of property that the city of Olivet has acquired. that abuts right next to Villa Park. But when you look at how deep this lot is, if I cut it in half and just show you the front part, you can see that there's a creek that runs right and bisects this lot by 2/3. 2/3 being south of it, 1/3 being north, with the north being down here at the bottom on Kenneth Place. So it really constrains the buildable area of the property to just this rectangular area here. Because it was a defined creek, we have a stream buffer regulations that are in place that are intended to protect erosion on the creek and to purify stormwater that gets into the creek itself. The petitioner went to the Board of Adjustments and received some relief from the setback requirements, subject to mitigating the two primary objectives of the stream bank buffer ordinance, and that is, again, to minimize erosion and to make sure that the impurities into the water are minimized also. And therefore, that's why you will see in this packet that there is a landscape plan that has been submitted in there. We still have some questions on them on there, but again, that creek kind of extends along here with a buffer, and then a second protection buffer, which the Board of Adjustment provided relief for the proposed footprint that's shown here to be submitted, if they can mitigate the stream bank issues regarding erosion and stormwater impurities getting into the water itself. And again, they're doing that by putting together a landscape plan for the commission to review. Overall, you can see from the staff concerns regarding in there, we understand the height. We're not concerned about the overall building height, but when you have the exposed foundation, the first floor, the second floor, and the attic, it just really towers above an adjacent home, and therefore we're asking that they mansard or Dutch the roofs on these, and that just kind of helps minimize some of the volume or mass on the property. The other issue that we pointed out was this west elevation is just this wall. This is pretty much the garage and the mudroom wall, but there's a lot of articulation and mass depth as you get further in here. But I think it's our responsibility just to note this section here to the commission if there are any concerns or issues. It does face west, so it faces the backyard of somebody else's property. So that therefore there may be some merits of minimizing visibility or onto that. Petitioners provided a landscape plan. We do have some concerns and recommendations for consideration in there, and are willing to work with the petitioner on those. But the intent of the landscape plan was, again, to address the two objectives of the stormwater buffer protection ordinance, and that again is limit the amount of erosion along the stream bank, and then to prevent the impurities getting into the water there. And bear with me 1 second, and I'm going to go back to.
Hey, Carlos, before you get off that plan, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Was there any
I'll
discussion with the petitioner about the width of that driveway?
Yes, it's one of our concerns again. Yeah. It's noted, it complies with the dimensional standards, but yes,
Okay.
we kind of talked about, about that, and
Yeah, because
it really has a
purposes
shallow
that,
front yard
yeah,
setback. What's
that driveway's almost their entire front yard.
Correct.
It's 40% of their front yard. So, all right.
Bear with me one
Sorry
second.
to interrupt.
Oh, no problem, sir. All right, so regarding that, we talked to the petitioner about possible recommendations for consideration. One, again, is to reduce the height of the top of foundation. We think at least 2 feet if possible, if there's that opportunity. Now, that would make it a little bit more difficult to make the walkout work. But again, we're trying to minimize the, how far or how high this building pops up above the ground in there. And again, they may be able to address some of that height by dutching or doing a mansard roof edge along the east and west building elevations. On the site plan, we need to minimize the slope from the street curb to the garage to no more than 25%. Given that top of foundation and the elevations of the street, that 20, the current slope, I think is too excessive in there. We would like to see the site plan revised to illustrate the stormwater storage pit location dimensions tied solely to the building foundation. Again, when we're out there doing inspections, we can't measure from a property line because we don't know exactly where they're at. So it's easier to have an improved component to it where we can measure from in there. There was also some requests to identify the locations of the lateral, the gas lateral, and the electrical connection. On the sump pump discharge, again, we're a little concerned because its proximity on the eastern side and its impact that it's going to have to the neighboring property in there. And we do think that they should provide some type of pit or some mechanism to minimize some of that runoff. With these sump pumps, we don't know how often they're going to run until the foundation's in place and the sump is installed. And they've been one of the headaches we've been trying to address, especially when they discharge on the side of the property. Again, looking to provide a 2-inch lip along the western edge of the driveway, similar to the previous petition, to redirect the stormwater away from a direct flow to the adjacent property. I think on the landscape plan, we would like some modifications, again, with the two main objectives in mind of filtering the stormwater going into the creek and reducing the velocity and runoff going into the creek. We also do want to see a construction traffic mitigation plan coordinated with staff. And we also have issues regarding the current street conditions. Now, this isn't the sole responsibility of the petitioner, but we would like them to work with the city in regards to doing some type of street improvements. Right now, it's an asphalt, it's a rock roadway, and we would like the surface area improved up to a standard that would be acceptable to the Fire and Public Works Department. At that point, I'd be glad to answer any specific questions. I think it may be reasonable to show you a Google view.
Could you expand on what street improvements you're talking about? You're just talking about in front of their property is what you would be.
I think we're going to be looking for more we're not looking for the petitioner to improve this road solely. I think that'd be hard to tie to it. But for whatever reason, on this road, the public improvements stop here. It's an asphalt road, it's a public street. And then at this point, it becomes private. And it's pretty much consistent to this rock. We would like to see that surface area improved. And we'd like to work with the developer to see how far we can get that improved. This is the location of the property that they're going to rebuild. We're not looking for, again, for it to meet a full level street standard, but I think any improvement we can get to that roadway for fire access and public works use, we would work with them.
Carlos, you said it's private. Who is the owner?
I am not exactly sure. It would be the adjacent property owners.
Do you know if the petitioner has discussed this with the
I know he's had discussions with some of the property owners. I don't think there's any formalized organization or formal grouping of who's in charge of it, is what we might find. But we can address that question when the petitioner comes in.
Okay, good.
And that's all I had, Chairman. I'd be glad to answer any specific questions. I do have the plans and the elevations in access. We did send out notifications in there. And again, I think there's still some downstream issues that need to be considered as part of any redevelopment, but I don't think that it's within the developer and this construction to resolve, what's going on further down south or east, excuse me.
Carlos, I just have one more question for you before we bring in the petitioner, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
What mechanisms do we have as a city to inspect their stormwater control, their siltation fence or whatever, especially after a major event, to make sure that it is operating the way it should? Do we or do we ask the petitioner to file reports after major events to make sure that the whatever is being placed to protect the stream is working through the course of the construction?
It's a
period?
good question. With the inspectors, after we receive major storm events, one of the things we've been working on is to go visit these construction sites to take a look at the siltations that are in place. Then also we try to get them every Friday to go drive down to take a look at the siltation, where some of these fences are in place, because over the weekend, just in case we get a storm event and all that. So on our end, we're trying to get a little bit better. I do now have an additional staff member to assist us in those. And then of course, part of any requested inspection, the first thing they're supposed to look at is the fencing and the siltation controls that are in place. So at this moment, those are that is what we do. We have authority to request that the petitioner or the contractor repair or improve any failing siltation on the property, or even add more if it's not working in there. That's well within our jurisdiction and our powers to do so. The big issue, I think, has been that we're trying to become more active or proactive in the process of checking on these.
Carlos, do you have any pictures of that back creek? I think it'd be good for everybody on the board to know what that looks like currently.
I am going to start first on the Google map, if that's all right, and see how far I can get here. Maybe not. And you can see the creek kind of gets underground here. Here's Dolores, which goes perpendicular with Kenneth here. That property that's being developed is further down the block on the left-hand side. We have these two new homes that have been built here before we had the stream buffer protected ordinance in there, but it opens up somewhere along here, and you can see the heavy shrubbery, and then comes really close to this home here. And here's where we have those downstream effects. This property owner has done quite a bit of improvements that under the current stream buffer ordinance would no longer be permitted because they encroach within 50 feet of the stream in there. But they've done several improvements and different rock and dam berm improvements to try to minimize stormwater flooding, especially impacting the backyard and the basement. And that creek kind of runs through in here, and then this is the subject property, and there's a little bridge right along that side in there. The creek's probably about maybe 6 to 8 feet from top of bank to top of bank. It does have water, standing water most of the time. And what happens is that along Llewellyn, you can see the storm inlet here. It is part of a big system that runs west towards Dealman. It all collects and goes under here, and then the pipe just releases here. It just opens up, and then all this becomes all the storm water that's been picked up pretty much from a majority of the properties south of Olive up to Dealman that go through here. And again, it runs through this area, the Kenneth, it goes back underground, then goes behind the shops at Price Crossing, and then through here where the old Amical station is. Now, all of this is gonna be underground as part of the Olive Crossing development, and ultimately it flows into this detention system here at the southeast corner or southwest corner of the ramp system with I-170 and Olive. Chairman, are you looking for more specific pictures, or is that okay?
You know, I would love to get a little bit more specific pictures so people understand kind of what the intent of the landscaping plan was.
I
Because,
can pull some of them from the Board of Adjustment meeting. Bear with me 1 second if you guys have patience here.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
because I just feel like the original intent of the landscaping plan requirement from the Board of Adjustments, this doesn't necessarily, you know, address a lot of those issues. I mean, I definitely appreciate, you know, some of the stones that they're putting in, the boulders and, you know, different things like that, and some of the shrubs, but you know, it still looks like uh, not as much emphasis on erosion control and preventing, um, you know, or any cleanup of that creek, because it looked like it needed some maintenance, so to speak.
Okay, here are some of the photos on that back area. And this is the creek. And this was from one of the adjacent neighbors. And again, these properties run, this is the area closest to Kenneth, and then the creek kind of bisects, and then this area is south. Most of the area is unimproved on the south end. This is a view of where the Llewellyn discharge happens here. This is the subject property, and you can see the creek. There's a little bridge that runs across, and then it continues down eastward. Then this is probably one of the better views of the amount of water that collects during a good storm. Now I am going to, I think these were some of the photos. This is the, yeah, here we go. This is the existing property, I believe. And here's some of the photos of the creek that were presented to the board. And here you can see the creek here at the lower right-hand corner. You can see the creek as it runs or bisects the property back here. And you can see the existing home has a driveway turnaround that just goes all the way almost up to the bank there. You can see the bridge that runs over. You can see some concrete in there. That parking area is just kind of here towards that low right-hand corner. Looks like they're going through the cycle. Again, here's the front along Kenneth. You can see the slope drop. And again, they're trying to raise this top of foundation to kind of have this area drain towards the roadway as opposed towards the back area here. And that's why you see that height in the top of foundation. We think it's just a little bit too excessive though. Some of the tree areas around here. That was the other thing with this new development. A lot of these mature trees between the creek and Kenneth would be removed. They're within the buildable area, and there was some concerns expressed about that loss of tree canopy area or root systems to kind of soak up some of that stormwater. You can see right here the concrete top of where the stormwater discharge comes off of Llewellyn. This is the adjacent home to the east. And again, here's a quick view. Just Jonathan had, you can see on here on the left-hand side, this red line represents the stormwater system, and it just stops here and opens up and just continues to drain eastward. What Jonathan was showing here, trying to show here, here's Kenneth Place. And again, that home is at the end here, but you could see all this red line all the way to Dealman up to the McDonald's, collects all that storm water, runs around here behind the 9376 building, all the way around here to Llewellyn, picks up and then discharges from this point here. And you can see it goes back to an underground pipe here at Dolores, an underground pipe system here at Price, and then pops back up here by I-170 in this area. The Olive Crossing development will put this creek all underground. At this point. Now the city is requesting funding from MSD to conduct a study about this creek system and what it would take to get this interconnected all the way through. But it's still that is going to move a lot slower than what this development is proposed to do. But the goal here would be that, whether there's opportunities to extend the piping system and I don't want to use the term eliminate the creek, but get rid of the creek in there. It's hard to, it's one of the options that would be considered as part of that study.
Carlos, what's the size of that pipe that goes under the First Street? No, right there.
Good question. I don't have an answer for that, or the ability to get that.
It almost seems like that might be damming everything up.
It is possible, and I think that's one of the goals again of trying to study that area in there. I know we can get an answer for that size. I just don't have that within this slide or the information in front of me.
And then the only other question I had is where the discharge is for the stormwater detention system. Isn't there a requirement that it has to be like 20 feet away from the embankment?
Let's see. That was one of the yes, but that was one of the Board of Adjustment waivers that was granted as part of that.
Okay, I can't.
That placement, what was within both of those buffers. So it was considered, and we talked about the pop-up emitter and all that, and that's where the concern was about trying to get, and I think again they tried to address it in that landscape plan. Bear with me here. Here we go. By adding, the dogwood or so, I think a better plan and a more of a berm type of landscaping system needs to be put in place.
Right. Okay, does anybody else on the commission have any questions or comments? If not, Carlos, I think we should bring the developer on.
Mr. Cohen, I'm promoting you to panelist, and then I know Mr. Rubin is in there. I'm not sure if.
Can you hear me, Carlos?
Yes, I can.
How are you tonight?
All right. Do you need Mr. Rubin or?
I'm not sure if Mark has any comments or not. I can try to address the commission's comments the best I can and kind of go from there. Thanks for the time, guys, tonight. I appreciate it. Carlos, would you, I really would like to try to focus possibly on the house-related questions, possibly as opposed to some of the creek-related issues. As you noted, those are historical and have been existing that way. So I don't know, what you'd like for me to maybe address first.
I think the concern about that top of foundation, I know we talked about the roof edges and you were okay taking that into consideration.
Yeah, so the commission, Carlos and I did speak this afternoon and talked about some of the massing of the house. We talked about the height of the foundation. I have no problem, clipping the edges, making it more of a hip style roof to minimize the perception of the height on the east side of the home as well as the west side. One of the suggestions that Carlos and I kind of bantered back and forth was the foundation height was and is suggested and drawn by the engineer because the current home sits lower than the current street. So by bringing it up, we were trying to get the water away from the foundation. Carlos and I did talk about lowering the garage area of the foundation to help minimize the slope of the driveway, but then keeping the main foundation itself as it sits and then adding a few more steps into the house to accommodate that. I'm not opposed to lowering the foundation overall. It's hard for me to say, on the call tonight without asking my civil engineer exactly how much, but I'm certainly open to doing what would make sense with the grades in the water. And then we talked about, Carlos, do you want me to discuss some of the articulation on the home? Do you want me to jump to some of the stormwater? What's the best use of what you'd like me to say?
Again, the two primary building issues was the top of foundation, the roofs, the roof profile, especially like right in this area here, of having that, some type of mansard or Dutch clip on those ends. And then this elevation here, if the commission had any concerns with that.
Yeah, that's a good, it's a good point that you brought that up. And so that wall is, in that side of the home, the west side does face the rear of Llewellyn. That wall is in the garage. So, I see possibly the suggestion of the commission maybe wanting to add windows. And I think to myself, maybe as a homeowner, that might limit your storage or things like that on that wall. So it's not that I don't want to add some elevation, articulation, or something to it. I just get concerned about adding some windows just to add windows for the sake of that. If that's, the direction the commission would want to go. I don't know if maybe a different suggestion is up for discussion that would maybe make some more sense.
What do you suggest?
I know that if I could channel Mike, I feel like he's probably going to talk about the masonry on the home. I just feel like that's coming. I don't know if maybe adding some more masonry on the right side of the home, which would be to the west. Is it windows? Rob, I'd love any thoughts you might have, or if Mike wants to jump in as well.
I'll defer to Mike, see what he has.
Yeah, quite honestly, and I appreciate you trying to channel my brain because I can't do that most of the time. I think if we clip, you hit the gable ends a little bit, and then, I don't know that I'm particularly worried about it. It's not like that elevation can be seen,
Right.
it's at the end of it's not even a cul-de-sac, it's just the end of a drive. And, I don't know, with some landscaping on that wall, I don't particularly feel strongly that we need to punch a window in that. I apologize if I'm Andy, if I'm disappointing you, but
I got a window. I feel like a double. I feel like there were two windows coming. I feel like there was something coming at me.
nah. I think you got your hands full just repaving that street. So
Yeah, I mean, Carlos called me today and he said, we'd like to go ahead and ask you to pay for all the asphalt for that. And I said, I don't think my credit card can handle that high of a charge on this project. I do, and Mike, I appreciate your comments. So the street appealed, not the physical street, but the location of the street, this very quiet, private, dead end feel. I was really drawn to it. I love the depth that it backs to a city park. I like the idea of the creek. I've got younger kids, so I think about cleaning the creek up, kids playing with a new sort of footbridge. The street is something that Carlos and I have kind of gone back and forth for probably 6-9 months. And I know that we're diligently trying to work on a solution. I've offered to contribute something to it. I hate to put Carlos on the spot. I think that I'm hoping the city is willing to do something as well. When Rob or Mike, when someone asked a question about the private association or how that is worked currently, the 3 homes to the north, and there's 1 vacant lot, are owned by a few family members, not necessarily together as far as how the deeds are concerned, but they've owned the properties for a while together. So I don't have a lot of information on how it has been maintained over time. But as I told Carlos, I'm willing to do something to contribute to the bringing the infrastructure up to something.
Have you had any discussions with them?
Not as it related to the street, more as it related to potentially sales of their properties. But I think because of COVID-19 and that it sort of just slowed down a little bit with the ongoing discussions with that. But no, we didn't directly address who's paying for what, how you maintain it over the years. I think Carlos, tried to go back to the history of it, why it, the pavement stopped. We never really got to the bottom of it. But I just think over the years, it's deteriorated in the sense of how you currently see it now. The Public Works Department about a month ago did go in, excuse me, and they did add some more gravel to remove that hump as you go down where it transitions. But with the storms and the snow, it's a temporary fix, but it's just a Band-Aid.
But Carlos, remind me, that is a public street, even where the pavement changes? Is it a public street in front of those, where the work?
Public component of the street stops right here at the asphalt. We've been going through some records trying to figure out why this segment was excluded. We're pretty confident that, this was part of the 1989 neighborhood improvement districts for those streets. But why these homes here stayed out, I'm not sure. We did find some plat information that at one point Kenneth was supposed to intersect with Llewellyn.
Is that a separate parcel of property, or is that an easement across other people's properties?
there was actually a plat recorded that ran an easement all the way to connect here to Llewellyn, but I guess it wasn't followed through or vacated when Llewellyn was constructed.
So you don't know who owns, there's been no title search on that parcel?
Correct. From this point on, we were making the assumption it belongs to the individual property owners.
Because that's not what the survey showed. You know, it shows the property line stopping short of that, at least the survey that's,
Yeah, I mean,
In its
being that
package.
it is a dedicated right of way, but it belongs to
oh,
each individual owner.
yeah. But the title work should address that, but maybe it doesn't. I would think the title work would address that.
Yeah, otherwise, how do you get to that property?
Yeah.
I could go back and check. Nothing came up strange or unique or odd when we did the title work for that. As far as, but I understand the concern. One of the things, if I could just jump in for a sec, Rob, I wouldn't disagree with what you said. The landscape design, it's a little weak. It was rushed prior to Jonathan departing. I think there needs to be, I don't want to use the term, I'm not a landscaper or an arborist, but I don't know if it's native grasses. I think that there's additional plantings that can be done. I didn't have the nursery address it as too detailed. I know Carlos and I had a discussion, depending how much you do to the creek, that it potentially could require a permit from the Army Corps of Engineer. So I fully intend to clean it up. It's an unsold home. So naturally I'm going to want to improve upon the aesthetics of it. I didn't want to get too aggressive in a submitted plan, not knowing what I could do, but I know what I want to do. And I know that the plan, quite honestly, is a little deficient.
Yeah, just remember the intent of what why it was there, like what Carlos hit on, those
Right,
two.
from the Board of Adjustment. Yet it's not addressing all those things. I would agree with that.
Right.
Would you be willing to look at the width of that driveway also and try to configure it so it doesn't seem to take up so much of the front yard?
Carlos, can you go back to the slide that would?
I mean, if we save on that concrete, it could be used for the street.
Negotiate right in the middle of we saved a couple windows and some concrete. Okay, how much street does that buy?
This is quite the deal. This is wheeling and dealing. So I would say, look, I'm certainly open to that. Yes. One of the things that I've seen over the years, that as the homes have become a little more expensive, some of the potential buyers may have a teenage driver. There's been a need for a request for third car garages, and it gets the vehicles off the street. So I would certainly be open to minimizing the concrete while still trying to service the 3-car entrance as efficiently as possible.
I think how we've done it before is just have it, the width at the street kind of be this, the same as kind of what the two-car garage door is, and then have it expand to the third. If I know that probably doesn't make too much sense. Makes
No,
sense.
I mean, it's you're choking it in. Oh, I know what you mean. Yes, I don't see that as an issue to do that. I don't have a problem with that, I think, is what I would probably respond that way.
Gotcha.
Carlos, if you want to squiggly that with your little pencil that's floating around.
One of the things I have to be cognizant of is that the
Oh,
fire
dear.
department is probably going to want to take a look at that existing surface area. It kind of runs up here and then kind of goes like that and then goes to the back of the house. in here. The key thing that we're gonna have to try to figure out is somehow they're gonna have to either provide some type of T or turnaround for the pumper truck. And it may be that it's gonna have to utilize this driveway to make that, to be able to do that if we solely can only work with the petitioner's property. Because I may not be able to go on across the other end, or it requires more coordination. So it's something we can take a look at. Is it something that the commission would consider, that if you know there is that third lane here, that if that can be more of a, you know, a permeable surface area as opposed to just the hard concrete, that kind of helps too on some of the you know, mitigate some of the stormwater velocity running off on the out towards the west.
I don't have an
Still
issue.
the same driveway width, is just maybe using, you know, those egg concrete shape things where you can get grass to grow through, or permeable pavement.
Could be a selling point, a green house selling point.
Does have a very large, deep green yard. It might just sort of tie in with that. It's
Right.
280 feet deep. We could take some of that from the rear to the front. We could, yeah, I think that would work. Carlos, I guess we need to find out from the fire chief or the fire marshal what their thoughts, what your thoughts. I don't know if you, me, and the commission necessarily would know what to say to do that tonight, but I'm open
No, I
to.
think that would be something the fire department would have to, you know, whether the commission approves the house or not, it's something that they'd have to address. I think their concern would be, you know, I need to get a vehicle safely in and out there. And if they're doing it under the current conditions, I think any improvement would be an enhancement, but that's going to be their call.
Sure. I would leave it that I'm open to staff discussion, the fire department discussion, some way to make something work. I'm
I think
amenable
the
to that.
concern, going back to Mr. Saunders' comments, is again, it's a wide driveway. I may need part of that driveway with, you know, pending what the fire department deems appropriate to either turn or back up at this point. But if there are opportunities to get the access area of the driveway to something more permeable for that third door, is that something that would be reasonable?
It would be naturally if the fire department wants to back up a truck or some heavy equipment, we would naturally want to have that be more obviously a port in place slab. So I would be open to either, whichever would be, I guess, the best benefit to the city and the overall build of the house, I suppose.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Anybody else on the commission have any items they want to specifically discuss? Carlos, is there anybody from the public that has any comments about this?
All right, I'm going to ask if there's anybody that wants to speak in regards to the petition. There are 3 attendees still on the meeting. If you can show your hand to get to the hand, it should be at the bottom of the monitor. Once you hover over the bottom of the monitor, it should show a little hand icon. If you click that, then I can see if you want to speak. If not, we'll continue on. All right, Chairman, I am not seeing any.
Okay, great. All right, Carlos, if you could pull up the motion and then the recommended conditions. That way, if we have to make any adjustments. One thing we didn't ask or talk about, the 2-inch lipper on the western edge of the driveway. I don't if we make those changes, we may not need that lip, you know, the
Correct.
fire department may not want that lip. I don't know. I would be fine if you work with staff on that.
Yeah, that was Carlos added that, or Carlos suggested that when we talked on the phone today. I would say I'm fine having it, or if it proves that it's a detriment to something else, I'm fine not having it.
Gotcha. Great.
Great question. Thank you.
Okay, do I hear any more discussion, guys, on this, or do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion if you want.
That'd be great, Brian.
Motion to approve the petition for site plan, community design, and concept stormwater management plan review for a new single-family home at 9328 Kenneth Place, as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development, dated February 18th, 2021. I guess I wasn't sure if we need to use, yeah, I guess the date works. Subject to any staff conditions noted therein, and then any other exceptions we need to note, committee?
I think Carlos has it.
Okay.
Maybe work with staff regarding changes or any changes required for the driveway.
And the fire, yep. Yep, fire marshal.
Carlos, does that work for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Motion's been made by Brian Lewis. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Tim Spiegelglass. Carlos, will you please call the vote?
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Saunders,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich,
Approved.
and Chairman Jurgel.
Approved.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time tonight, everyone.
Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on. Item number 5, discussion items, urban agriculture. Carlos, being that it's 8:50, I think we might, and I don't know if we have too much more to report on this. What do you think?
Just real quick, a couple of slides that I like to go through in the overview. I didn't anticipate any action tonight. I know the council is also going to be reviewing or discussing this at their next meeting in there, but I want to note that Mr. Martin's kind of redrafted the text, and by redrafting, I guess what I'm referring to is his recommendation is to create a whole new chapter called urban agriculture. Take this out of zoning. There's been some concerns about that, and then have it as a standalone chapter with some guidance regarding what the goal here is. And again, the council wanted the commission to put together some reasonable regulations for urban agricultural type activities where people can do those with the following 2 objectives. One, that provide parameters where it could just be done without any permitting. 2, that there's some administrative authority to allow somebody to expand on that. And then 3, for those that really get into it, that they have an opportunity to petition the commission and verify or justify some of the reasonings of what they'd like to do. So again, real quickly, we discussed this about the purpose of intent of this ordinance is to recognize that there's a balance that's necessary for urban agricultural activities here in the residential setting. Define our community parameters for, as a community, what are we willing to allow and under what conditions, that these should be done respectfully to our neighborhoods and their identity, that we should develop access to resources for residents to use to inform them, educate them regarding these type of activities, ensure that there's an exit strategy in place for those, to preserve and protect from bamboo. That was something Mr. Martin added, which we'll have him in our next meeting, and then establish a framework for the permitting structure of this, the permitting process for these things. Again, we talked about livestock, and I think we've really limited down that people can have up to 6 hens, up to 3 hives, and that we would prohibit roosters. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about those that have them now, and that those would be the conditions that would be in place. For horticulture, that's one that we've had, we've been going back and forth. I'm trying to get get a well-defined definition of what we're trying to do. And the goal here is that we're having problems with really native grasses. You know, I'm not talking about native plantings and all that, but there are these grasses. And why we have this problem is that in our nuisance ordinance, it says that you can't have grass over 7 inches. Well, when I have somebody planting native grasses, which could grow, you know, well beyond 24 inches, they're in conflict with the nuisance ordinance, and we're, you know, my staff is getting into this push and pull thing where, you know, the nuisance code says you can't have grass more than 7 inches, but yet we've been, you know, advocating for people to consider, you know, prairie grasses and prairie type of restorations. And again, we're trying to make a distinction here that we're not, you know, after vegetable gardens, we're not after rain gardens, we're not after other type of prairie plantings, trees, shrubs, landscaping. It's more specifically the native grasses, wild flowers, and forbs. You know, I took out the ferns, shrubs, and trees because I know there was some concerns from some commission members on there, because that's not the goal. And we're saying those that exceed the limitations under the nuisance ordinance, and then we're providing some pictures. And again, it's to establish standards in where somebody can do this without, you know, having to go through any approval process. If it's done under some specific standards, and somebody can do something more extensive, but at that point they would go through a review process. And then what we're really trying to avoid is the one that really looks like severe overgrowth. And again, this may be a well-designed native landscaping in there, and it may be something that the commission would approve if they saw the details and the specifications behind it. It's hard to tell in there, but it's even more hard. It's more difficult for an inspector to try to tell and decipher that on the field. And that's what we're trying to give some assistance for the inspectors to be able to go through. So I put in these 2 definitions in here for you guys to review. After that,
Hey, Carlos, before you go back past those pictures, I'm sorry. You think it would be helpful to explain under those pictures why it's acceptable under this new ordinance versus why the one is not? So it's
a good
clear.
point. I'd be more than glad to add that. I thought about that, and I in the purposes of saving time in formatting, I didn't put that, but I think.
Yeah, pictures are worth 1,000 words, and I think those are great examples, but I think if we could just be clear on, you know, this is acceptable, it's proper setback, or, you know, whatever, you know, all the parameters. And, you know, this might be acceptable with approval, but here's why it needs approval. So.
No problem. I'll be glad to add those, and we can discuss them at the next.
At least that's my thought. I don't know about other commissioners. Yeah. Sorry.
The next big thing that we would try to tackle is about the variations, and we've identified a variations section. The purpose of the variations section is to permit somebody that wants to do something more beyond those that are administratively allowed in there, because there should be some flexibility in this ordinance. The variation process also takes it into a public format, which allows this commission to kind of play the mediator arbitrator of the process, and you know, makes it more the community's decision as opposed to you just can't do it. So for the variations, you know, there needs to be some standards in place for the commission to make the decision. So for variations, we consider the why. You know, why is a property owner seeking to exceed the parameters? They may have an issue with stormwater, or it could be that they abut a high arterial roadway, or they're trying to screen from non-residential or multifamily properties, or any other reason. That we would consider placement, the placement and location of the urban agricultural activity, again, in a big yard or wide yard or a deep yard, that there may be some flexibility, that, you know, there may be reasons to grant flexibility to those conditions. We would consider buffering. In here, I'm talking about more about the buffering that would limit visibility from neighboring properties. You know, they may be willing, you know, if somebody's doing an extensive rain garden or native grasses, you know, and if they have a 6-foot tall wooden fence what is the purpose of having it set back 5 or 10 feet from the property line if it's going to be limited in visibility? So they would have that opportunity to go to the commission and make that request. We would consider the lot size, similar like to placement. We would consider topography. And then we would also consider the shielding of that activity from other properties. Different from the visual buffering, this is more about what would you be bringing in to this to help mitigate concerns that a neighbor may have regarding the type of urban activity that you're looking at. So those would be the conditions for the variation, or the standards for the review for the variation. They're starting to come into place, and then they're ask you guys to read through those, take a look at them. We'll discuss them at our March 4th meeting. And then there's grandfathering, and that's one I think the council's trying to get its hand around, both in purposes of from a public relations perspective and a humane perspective. But what we're saying in grandfathering is that there's no exceptions. So anybody that exceeds the standards that have been provided are going to have to register, and we're going to have some that are in compliance and they're going to be okay, and that some that are not in compliance. They'll have a total of 90 days to declare that, to make that claim of being grandfathered in, and then they would follow the same process like anybody else would and be reviewed under the same conditions that anybody else would. So if somebody had bamboo that extended into the front yard at an excessive amount, they would be in non-compliance. They would have 90 days to declare that they're in non-compliance, so they can at least start the process of petitioning the commission to keep their bamboo. And then the commission would assess whether that bamboo should be authorized under the variation conditions that we've outlined here, and whether the request is reasonable, whether they may have to do some modifications, or in the worst case example, that they have to remove it completely. That's the intent of the grandfather, and I think we've expanded on the wording and taken the considerations. And again, there's no guarantee to anyone that they would be able to maintain or keep what they have. And there's also no intent of saying that you couldn't continue having what you have. And I know that's kind of contrary to those, but there's a process. We've defined a process, and I think it's a fair, balanced process of how those assessments would be made. And I know this was issued today, so I asked, if you guys take a look at it, we can further discuss at the March 4th meeting. I'll also have Mr. Martin attend March 4th and the March 8th, the 15th meeting. I'm not sure which one of the two he'll attend. I know he's going to be talking with the council at their next upcoming council meeting about the grandfathering clauses in there, and that's all I have in there. I know Carol had some concerns about the horticulture, and she wasn't feeling well this afternoon, so I want to talk to her about those definitions and those pictures also. So I do want to get her input on that.
I think those pictures and, even those comments Mike was talking about is going to definitely, I would think it's going to help her, make her feel more comfortable with it, I hope.
And I do want to remind everybody that, the city's website maintains all that information on there, and urge you to take a look at it if you get the opportunity. Because we've been making a big effort to make sure that the information is available in public. Now, this was the latest update, but it is now under the draft regulations of noted with the date. And then the previous report is now in the report section back here from our last meeting.
Carlos, I'm just going to add a little bit that I spoke to Kate Hellman earlier this week regarding beekeeping and chickens and stuff. And she was one of the, I guess, had some comments on this, and she's going to be willing to speak, kind of talk about best practices, talk about the allergy issues, things like that. And if you guys have any specific questions or concerns with some of the issues that's in her wheelhouse or expertise, if you can, either send Carlos or myself a list, because we'd like to, get that to her. So she has a little chance to review. So if it's maybe not something that she's an expert on, she can at least find out some information or point us in the right direction on that. She did have some ideas of best practices to deal with people who are allergic to bees. And it's all about kind of the flight pattern of the bees coming in and out of the hives itself. And I don't think there's anything more to really discuss at this point. It'd be better to hear it from her. So go ahead, Jody.
I know she was talking about the chickens, and she was saying 6 chickens wasn't enough to support her family of 4. Does she have any idea of how many other families are raising chickens that are going to need more than 6? So we'll have to have, they'll have request a variance on the chickens.
Carlos, have you done any research on that to see?
Not on the specific number. We have like which properties have out there, but we haven't went out there. We haven't, in the research, we didn't count how many chickens they had. I guess it would have been worthwhile to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, because if everybody's going to be coming in and saying, I want 8 or 10 chickens, maybe 8, 6 isn't the right number to start with. I don't know.
Well, and if I can add that, because that was one of the discussions we had internally too, that, through this code, no different than the Olivet residential redevelopment and design guidelines, they'll get tweaked over time. And that's why I want to keep it at the commission level, because the commission becomes more cognizant aware of it. So if we see petition after petition come in for 10 or 12 or 14, the commission's more apt to see that pattern and make the request that the ordinance get changed. So again, we're starting off with the 6. We could look at that and bring that up to a 10 or so, or just see how it works over time. If we're back here 3 months to amend it and up the number, there's nothing wrong with that, in that process. That's what ordinances are for. But I just want to make sure that you're cognizant or aware of that aspect of it.
Okay, good. I think for the sake of time, I think we should just kind of move on, if that's okay with everybody.
Right?
All right, so we'll move on to, I'm sorry. Do we have any public comments on this? I think we better.
I do have 2 attendees on there. I don't know if anybody would like to speak at this moment. Okay, Chairman, at least for now, I'm not seeing any hands up.
Good. Okay, we'll move on to item 6, other business, and item A is 12 Forsythia Lane. Some elevation modifications, Carlos?
Chairman, we have some changes that have been proposed on the elevation that were supposed to be minor, but when I took a look at them today, I need to discuss them further with the building inspector. So I'm going to ask that we defer that.
Good. I did not see any meeting minutes in our packet, so.
Correct, and Miss Waters did have them drafted for me. I just did not have an opportunity to edit them.
Okay, no worries. Okay, reports, Carlos?
Let me get down here. Just to remind the commission, council has a work session on the 2nd. Actually, that should be the March meeting dates, March 2nd. They have a meeting next week on the 23rd, and then their work session will be March 2nd, and regular meetings will be March 9th and March 23rd. So I'm sorry about that. For us, the commission will meet on March 4th and the 18th. Our April dates are the 1st and the 15th. Regarding city events, again, we're still have some limitations regarding access into the city center, also with staffing. I urge tomorrow, Mayor Springer is hosting Coffee with the Mayor. Her guest is Pat Kelly, who's the executive director, the Municipal League of the St. Louis. And he's going to talk about regional cooperation. I urge anybody that has the time to attend. It should be a good discussion. Also, the more people we have, I think it would be well reflected for the city.
What time is that?
It's at 8:45.
Okay.
Don't forget, we have municipal elections scheduled April 6th. In this newsletter that should be going out within the next week, you'll have bios and platforms for the 2 candidates. And absentee voting opens this Tuesday. The police department is conducting a community camera registration where you can register any of your security cameras with the police department for community use. Regarding public works, of course, they continue to monitor various MSD improvements that are going on throughout the city. Several probably reached pretty significant milestones. One is being the 82nd Street corridor improvements. You've seen the disruptions on Olive. I think the weather may have delayed some of that, but they'll continue as they finalize that aspect of it. And then the Cherry Tree stormwater improvements were pretty big. They've been moving really fast on those. And then, of course, with this week's weather events, Republic Services was on a delay schedule, but I think they're somewhat back. I think, but at least on our website, we're showing that all the days have been posted, have been set back one day, depending on what your scheduled date was. Parks and Recreation, the East-West Gateway Council of Governments is seeking public input. I think you can do it through their website for federal funding projects that are listed for this fiscal year. One of those projects is the Centennial Greenway. So I urge, if you have an opportunity, just to put in something in support of the Greenway to get funded. Regarding the Master Parks Plan, they held informational meetings on both the community center and then for the parks improvements earlier this month. They were pretty well attended and pretty informative. I believe they should both be posted on the city's YouTube channel for view. I urge you, if you get an opportunity, it's a lot of good information, and Ms. Knight always does an excellent presentation. They'll be hosting the spring break camp from March 22nd to the 26th. And then in May 1st, Olivet and Bloom will have a opportunity where you can ask a master gardener questions at various sites throughout the community. I know one is the community center, Stacy Park, and I think at the Veterans Fountain. For my department of planning, we'll be posting for the planner position beginning next week, hopefully, and we'll probably give about 30 days for somebody to submit resumes and applications in there. So that being said, I don't see having a replacement till, my fingers are crossed, hopefully by mid-May, or if not sooner. Development updates, again, the Greenway Centennial Trail, that continues. I don't have any more recent news from what we've told you in the past. Olive Crossing, they did have a TIF meeting last week in which they scheduled a public hearing. I believe that is going to be set for March 8th. Council Liaison Wall may correct me on that. Actually, it's the 28th. And their Plant Haven Commercial Center, there hasn't been any activity, especially given the recent weather events. Same with the City Center. Really anxious to see that, because they should get that footing poured in place, and we'll start seeing, the framing start to go up. Easy Storage, again, slow progress. Firestone, it seems like they're actively working. We keep getting calls as they get set to close on that property. We hope that that's going to be done within the next 30 or 45 days or so. I think that covers all the city events. Be glad to answer any specific questions if there are any, Chair.
Any questions? Oh, we'll go on to Missy. Thanks, Carl.
And thank you, Chairman. The only thing I have to report is I show that TIF meeting is at 7 p.m. on March 29th on my pad of paper. So, we might have to just clarify that with the city. Other than that, Carlos always does a very good summary. I have nothing additional to add other than to thank you all for your service, your commitment to the city and how we do and build things. So that's it.
All right, great. Anybody else have any comments they want to add? All right, that being said, we'll adjourn this meeting at 9:13 p.m. Thanks, guys.
Thank
you all
you.
Very much.
Good night,
care.
everyone.
Safe.
Have a good week.